3D printers are kind of the hamsters of the technology world. They die and break in just the weirdest ways possible. Today we'll be talking about one of the most dangerous parts of a 3D printer, its inherent ability to be a massive fire hazard. Hi, I'm Callum, and the hot end of a 3D printer generally gets to about 200 degrees Celsius or higher, and for my fellow Americans that's about 392 degrees Fahrenheit. That is very easily fire levels of hot, but fortunately we have put in precautions to prevent this in our 3D printers. And while I have never had a printer catch on fire or even really get that close, that's certainly not true for everybody, so it's good that these precautions are in place in case something bad does start to come about. Unfortunately, safety doesn't always work, and the most well-known example of this is the Anet A8, a printer very infamous for catching on fire pretty consistently. Because of how cheap this printer is, it's not really a big shock that this printer is susceptible to catching on fire. The Anet A8 has become synonymous with danger, with many people losing their new 3D printer to a small fire. But one man fell for the allure of this printer, and after noticing that it was printing well for the first 10 or 11 times, he left it running for over 11 hours at home while he was at work and his wife was also away from the house. His wife then came back home before he did with the printer engulfed in flames. And had she been a few minutes later, the whole house might have burned down, according to him. Fortunately, they had a fire extinguisher, and the fire was contained to just the 3D printer. The cheapness of these 3D printers basically caused them to catch on fire more consistently. And while it's possible to make very safe and very effective printers with cheap parts, you do need to invest some money into at least the safety part, if nothing else. The moral of the story is to not leave your 3D printers unattended. No matter how much you trust your printer, it's very possible they could catch on fire or just break down in any way possible. I know my printers have broken while I wasn't looking before. Like I said, if you want to know more about this story that I've been talking about, I left a link in the description. But it's not that the Anet A8 is a bad printer. Like the man said in his story, the Anet A8 created some really good parts before it, burned itself down. So it is possible for this printer to be a much better printer, but you have to make a lot of safety modifications that may just not be worth your time or your money. If you do already own this printer and you haven't made these modifications, it may be a good idea to do so. Just, you don't really want to burn your house down, right? That wouldn't make you very happy, I assume. So, update it. Come on. A few replacement parts is probably cheaper than a new house, right? But despite the unfortunate events of the Anet A8, it's actually pretty rare for 3D printers to actually catch on fire and engulf themselves in flames. Because, shocker, most companies put really good safety precautions into their printers before shipping them around the world. So while we're on the topic, let's talk about some of these safety precautions that people take in order to make sure their printers don't catch on fire and burn down everything around them. The first and probably the most obvious thing is there's plenty of sensors within the 3D printer that detect temperatures of the heat bed, the hot end, and many other places on the printer. If you've ever used a 3D printer, you'll notice on the display that it shows the temperature of at least the hot end and the bed. Those are probably the two main things you want to worry about when it comes to temperature anyway, so it's good that they're provided. So yeah, not having these sensors would be a little bit of a problem. Next, we're just got to talk about the safety that even if you don't own a 3D printer, you probably have. Smoke detectors and fire extinguishers. These things are great for detecting and putting out fires. I know, crazy. Whether you want to own a 3D printer or you don't, you should really make sure that these are updated, but especially if you want to own a 3D printer, make sure your smoke detector works. Come on, guys. And make sure you have a fire extinguisher that isn't as old as Ron Swanson's in Parks and Rec.
Yeah. Okay. I'll replace this.
Another feature that most 3D printers have is this thing called thermal runaway. Well, it's not really a feature, it's more just error detection. If your printer can no longer detect how hot the hot end is, it'll immediately just stop functioning. This happened to me once when my thermistor broke, but we'll get to that in a second. Basically, if you see thermal runaway, you're gonna want to replace something. But it's good that this is a feature installed so that way you're not just printing while the temperature of your nozzle just keeps going up and up and up and up indefinitely. Some printers come stock with this. I don't own any that do, but enclosures can help contain fires if a fire were to happen in the first place. Most people actually use enclosures so they can print other types of filament, mainly ABS, but an enclosure can also help prevent a fire from spreading farther within your home. So it's a nice little bonus. As you may expect, there's plenty of fans all over the 3D printer. This is to help regulate temperatures of nozzles, hot ends, power supplies, and anything else within the printer. And the last thing I want to mention is well-made power supplies. Before you buy a 3D printer, make sure the power supply they have isn't garbage, because that's a massive safety violation. This goes for you if you're building a PC as well. Make sure you have a good power supply. And that's most of the main components that are used to make sure your 3D printer doesn't go up in flames. One more thing I'd like to mention if you're really concerned about fire safety is to visit a website I linked in the description, 3D Print Clean. They provide a lot of products that help make sure your printers don't catch on fire. So if you need some extra protection or you're just a little bit paranoid, then I would consider visiting this website. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about fire hazards in 3D printing. Now a word from today's sponsor. Hey there, quick question for you. Are you happy with your current job or your career? Do you like going to work every day, and do you see yourself doing what you're doing right now forever? If not, I'd like to share a little bit about the sponsor of this video, the Programmer Coach. The Programmer Coach is an online coding program that teaches people how to code and get a high-paying job as a software developer. Their program is unique in that they teach you how to code by doing through practice, which is truly the only way to learn a skill at the end of the day, right? Plus, they provide you with coaches that will help you whenever you run into any issues. They also have career and coaching placement services, where they work with you to help you get your first job as a software developer. And the best part, their program is affordable and accessible to anyone and everyone. That's right, you won't pay the bulk of your tuition until you actually land a job as a software developer. To learn all the details you'll ever need and get all of your questions answered, simply go to becomeaprogrammer.com. Once again, that's becomeaprogrammer.com. Thank you to the Programmer Coach once again for sponsoring today's video. That's the end of the video. I'm Callum Prince, and I'll see you guys next time.